Namaskar and welcome to SAMVAAD. I am Subhash Jangala, Joint Director in the Directorate General of Administration and Taxpayer Services. And I invite you to yet another insightful and informative discussion from SAMVAAD. Tax deducted at source, that is TDS, is a concept that was introduced with an aim to collect tax at the very source of income. The benefits of TDS are ease of compliance and timely collection of resources for the government. It is indeed noteworthy that we are having this session in 2022, as exactly 100 years ago, the principles of TDS were codified in the Income Tax Act 1922, the precursor of the present day's Income Tax Act 1961. TDS continues to be an effective and efficient mechanism for tax collection, even today, garnering more than 6.5 lakh crores out of the total direct tax collections in the country. For this session on a very important topic, we have with us today Ms. Deepika Mittal, an officer of the 1994 batch of the Indian Revenue Service. Ms. Deepika Mittal has served at various important positions across the country, including assessment and appeals. Along with a stint in the Financial Intelligence Unit, she has also worked in the Systems Directorate, where she was closely associated with the rollout of the e-filing of TDS returns and 26AS in 2005. Subsequently, she worked as a director in the Unique Identification Authority of India at the time of its launch. She is presently posted as Commissioner of Income Tax at the Centralized Processing Center, TDS. It is indeed a pleasure to have you with us today, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Subhash, for having me here. Namaskar to all the viewers across the country.
Ma'am, so like we discussed in the earlier session that we had on deductors, the Traces portal is really the center wherein the three stakeholders of the TDS ecosystem meet. So in respect of taxpayers, is it necessary that they register themselves on the Traces portal as well in addition to the e-filing portal?
Subhash, taxpayer registration is also required on Traces website for fulfilling certain legal obligations and availing facilities. Some of the facilities which are available to taxpayers after doing a successful registration and login are like viewing and downloading 26AS, provisional view of TDS certificates, then placing a request for low deduction or no deduction in Form 13 and 15E, and downloading their corresponding certificates. Then also placing requests for corrections in 26QB, QC and QD forms. Then placing requests for refunds for pertaining to 26QB, QC and QD, and tracking their status, and downloading certificates corresponding to these forms in 16B, 16C and 16D.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, can you explain the process for the registration of a taxpayer on Traces portal?
Like was in the case of deductors, a taxpayer needs to visit the Traces web portal at www.tdscpc.gov.in and select the taxpayer option, input the details, and for taxpayers, 4 options are available for validating. They can input TDS or TCS collected or deducted. Then they can validate also using self-assessment, advance tax, TDS on property or rent, which a transaction to which they have been a party to. They can also put in input details of the original Form 26QB filed by them, and the most importantly, Aadhaar or VID can also be entered for validating themselves.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, going from the earlier question, in case there is a taxpayer who wishes to register himself or herself on the Traces portal from outside India, whether they're a resident or a non-resident, is there any difference in the process of registration?
Yes, the major difference is that a separate link is available. They are supposed to visit the URL https://nriservices.tdscpc.gov.in, and in their case, Aadhaar based OTP validation is not available.
Ma'am, additionally, now there are certain cases where we have seen that the taxpayers were not able to view the entire list of TDS related details in the 26 AS because of the larger size of the transactions. In such a case, what is the resolution for the taxpayer?
A taxpayer has to place a request after logging in and in a text file format, which is available for download to them, and then they can convert it into Excel using any of the utilities available.
Okay. And ma'am, there are certain cases wherein the TDS TCS entries, which should have been reflected in the 26 A's of a particular taxpayer, were not being reflected for whatever reason. In that case, I mean, why does it really happen, and what would be the resolution for the taxpayer?
See, a tax credit on account of TDS is based on the information furnished by a deductor or collector in the TDS statement filed. So, any correction in the detail has to be carried out by the deductor. So, the taxpayer is required to contact their deductors or collectors of tax for such resolution. In case there is no response for them, they can come and log into the portal and place a request under the request for resolution menu. When they place a request like this, giving the TAN and other details, the details automatically get forwarded to the jurisdictional TDS assessing officer for taking further necessary action.
Okay. And ma'am, alternatively, on the exact opposite side of this, sometimes there are taxpayers in whose case there are transactions visible in the 26 A's which do not pertain to their own PAN at all. In such circumstances, what would be the next step to be taken?
In such cases also, the taxpayer needs to come to the site, to their traces portal, and under request for resolution menu, they need to input the request. Such request will also get automatically forwarded to the jurisdictional TDS assessing officer for taking further action.
Okay. Ma'am, and in some cases, we have also seen that when a taxpayer has filed a certificate or an application for a lower deduction of TDS, sometimes the status of that particular application shows as a clarification required by the assessing officer. What needs to be done in such a case?
When the status is that clarification is required, there is a hyperlink which is available to the taxpayer. So the taxpayer needs to click on the hyperlink. After clicking on the hyperlink, the taxpayer can input their comments, and they can also upload documents. The only limitation here is that the document size should be less than 5 MB, and the uploaded document should be password and virus free.
Okay. And in certain circumstances, let us say that a taxpayer has filed or submitted an application for a lower deduction of TDS certificate. However, the certificate has not been issued to him yet. That is, it is still in the state of processing. During that time, is it possible for a taxpayer to amend or modify his application online?
See, till the time the form number 13 status shows as submitted, the taxpayer can cancel the request made. Taxpayer will not be able to cancel the existing request once the status changes to pending with AO. In such cases, the taxpayer can approach the assessing officer and request for a withdrawal, and with the approval of the AO, the request can be allowed to be withdrawn.
Okay. And ma'am, there are certain cases, certain taxpayers who have the requirement of a lower deduction of a certificate or a no deduction certificate in more than 50 transactions. In such a case, what would be the process to apply for a Form 13?
See, Subhash, in such cases, the taxpayer has to place a request for generation for Form 13 through an offline utility which is made available to the taxpayer on the traces portal.
Okay. And ma'am, are there any particular situations where the revision in an lower deduction certificate or no deduction certificate is allowed, or is where they are not allowed?
See, revision of a certificate issued for low deduction or no deduction of tax will not be allowed in case the validity of the certificate has expired, or the amount for which the certificate was issued has been consumed, or the certificate is cancelled by the assessing officer. In these scenarios, the revision will not be allowed.
And that was an insightful discussion on the most important interactions of our taxpayers with the Traces portal and the 26AS statement. Given the importance of TDS credits and claiming them in returns of income, I am sure this session has been of assistance to our taxpayers who have joined us from across the country. In the next session, we shall be discussing about one of the most talked about TDS clauses in the Income Tax Act, TDS on purchase of property. Do tune in on our YouTube channel to view this discussion. Until then, thank you and Jai Hind.